Good morning. Welcome to day 2 of our coffee chats with our exemplary school counselors from Indiana. I am very glad that you're here with us. We are obviously celebrating National School Counseling Week. So for all of you joining us who are school counselors, I want to wish you a very happy National School Counseling Week. This is a fabulous week for us to, of course, share the wonderful work that we as school counselors do every day in the schools for students. But it's also a great day, of course, a great week, of course, to advocate for the role that we do play, especially for those who may not fully understand the role of the school counselor. So wishing you a great week. Hope everybody has a fabulous week. And we are very happy to have with us today our middle school exemplary school counselor. And before I introduce Karen, I want to introduce myself. So my name is Amanda Callahan. I am the coordinator for Counselor Connect, which is an initiative out of the Central Indiana Educational Service Center, or CIESC. And the sessions this week are being co-hosted by both Counselor Connect and the Indiana School Counselor Association. So again, welcome. Now I'm going to go ahead and turn our attention over to our middle school, Indiana's middle school exemplary school counselor, Karen Bowman. And Karen, I am going to hand it over to you to tell us a little bit about yourself. And you're muted.
I think you muted me. Good morning.
Sorry.
It's great to see all of you. And I didn't realize I had been put on mute. I guess I had been talking too much already this morning to Amanda. So I was very humbled to be nominated as the middle school counselor of the year for Indiana this year. And my journey has been pretty long. Actually, this is my 37th year in counseling, and I've been a variety of places. I started out down in Muncie, Indiana, kind of contemplating going to grad school. My husband and I had just gotten married, and prior to getting married, we had both worked in children's homes. Jim, my husband, who was a school psychologist through the years, he actually had worked at a boys' home back in Western New York, where he was from. And when I met him at the time, he had just finished school at Taylor University, which is in Upland, Indiana, and that's where I attended for undergrad. And he was working at the Bethel Home for Boys, contemplating what he was going to do next after graduating from Taylor with a biology degree. So I had often thought through the years, I was very good in art. So I had become an art teacher. I had graduated, got a job right after graduation as a high school art teacher, but I was always interested in art therapy, some type of work with, kids and art, somehow trying to integrate that. But then when we were working at the homes, I just really became very interested in, helping the kids, talking to the kids. And we were, I was working, he was working at the home. And then one summer I also did a summer stint of cooking for the kids, the boys at the boys' home, which really made me realize how much I did like working with them. And he decided to go into school psych, and the art teacher that I had worked with in Jay County down in Portland, Indiana, she was going back to grad school and she was going to become a school psychologist. So she introduced me to the head of the counseling department at Ball State, and I talked with her. And through the 3 years of working with the high schoolers, they were constantly encouraging me too. They said, you should be a counselor. You're so good at listening to us and talking with us. And, so I did part of my practicum then in Jay County as a school counselor. And that's kind of how I got into the whole idea of helping students and working with them. And I love doing the art teaching, but I knew I could do a lot more as a counselor. So let me take a drink. Not coffee, just water. So I was in Jay County for 3 years, and then my husband Jim had to do a full year internship as a school psychologist. So he ended up getting a school psychology internship position in the Hammond schools. And we moved up here when our daughter was 2 weeks old to Griffith, Indiana. And I stayed off a year. I did kind of odd jobs to make extra money. And by the next summer, I ended up getting hired by Union Township Schools. And I became the only school counselor for Wheeler Junior Senior High School out in Valparaiso. It was a grade 7 through 12 position, and I was hired 3 days before school started. And that was way before computers. Like, we had no computers. We had, everything was on paper, and walked into a position where there was about 80 unscheduled kids out of 450 at the time at that school, but there were many singleton classes. So it was like baptism by fire, jumping in the fire. And it all, just those 7 years spent there, I learned a whole lot about counseling and working with kids, made mistakes, learned from those mistakes. I had good leadership to work under. And then during that time period, and I'll talk a little bit more about my kids a little later. I had some pictures, but ended up going to taking 3 years off from school once I had my fourth child, and then started at Kaler Middle School in Dyer. And I was there for 10 years and started out as the only counselor with about 700 kids at the time, grades 6 through 8. And fortunately, I was able to convince the school administrators that I needed some extra help because email was starting to come into play, and voicemail, and imagine, it was just crazy because people were contacting me nonstop. So fortunately, I was able to bring on Erin Spinks, who is one of my colleagues to this day. And she was hired in as they called it a homeschool facilitator, but she was basically like an assistant counselor and had done counseling work through probation. So 10 years there. And then I decided it was time for a change. I always like new challenges. So I ended up transferring to Lake Central High School, and I was a counselor there for 13 years. And then in the year 15-16, I was contemplating another change. I loved my job, but it was time to do something different again. And I ended up going to Clark Middle School, where I currently serve. And it was really cool because I'm working under Scott Graber, who is my principal, and he and I worked together for probably 9 years at Kaler, where he was the assistant principal and then became the principal. So it's kind of all come around, and it's just been a really great journey through the years here with Lake Central School Corp. We can go to the next slide.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. Will you tell us, I know you're at Clark Middle School, some people may be joining us from across the state on here. So can you tell us where exactly that is in the state, or at least what direction it's in?
Yes, we are in Northwest Indiana, and we are a large school corporation. We have about 3,200 kids at the high school. There are 3 middle schools within the Lake Central School Corporation. Kaler Middle School, which is in Dyer. There's Grimmer, and Grimmer is in Cherville, and then Clark is located in St. John. So we're called the Tri-Town area, and we feed into the high school. We have 6 elementary schools. My own kids attended Watson and then went to Grimmer. That was before Clark was built. And then Clark opened in January of 2008. So now we have students feeding into all 3 middle schools from our elementaries. And right now Clark is the largest, Kaler's right behind us, and then Grimmer's our smaller middle school at this time. Okay, we're right up in the corner, right outside of Chicago. So we get all the Chicago news, and we don't get a whole lot of Indianapolis news. So we have to check on the Indy Star once in a while, find out what's going on down the state.
Great, thanks. That helps kind of paint a good picture of where you're at and where you're located. And The other question that I like to ask, I asked this yesterday to our elementary counselor, is your ratio. Do you know what your student to counselor ratio is?
Yeah, fortunately, yes, it's about, I would say 400 to 1, a little under that for the 2 middle schools that have 3 counselors. Brimmer is about 725 or 750 approximately, so they might be just under 400. We were able to add 2 additional counselors in the middle schools several years ago, which helped reduce that number. And then the high school added 2 additional counselors. So currently we have 10 counselors serving about 3,200 students.
Thank you. And I will go to your next slide.
Okay, I threw this
Share
one
a little
in.
bit about this.
Yeah, so I threw this one in. I'll explain a little later, when I talk about the SEL role that I've had, but this was kind of a Bitmoji I made during the pandemic and ended up using it for some videos that my secondary, the head of secondary education, Sarah Castaneda, and I would do for our second step program. And I'll talk about that in a little bit, but we had to screencastify all last year and into this year, our lessons that we did for our advisory, and we would put timers in. So I would use this Bitmoji, and then I had a timer for a minute when we would have the kids do discussion. And it's just something that's I just kind of become a little trademark over the last couple of years. I just kind of enjoyed doing it. So I just threw that in there, and it was the Great Kindness Challenge 2 weeks ago. So we've been running that here at the middle schools. And the high school at Lake Central, they also did the Great Kindness Challenge, and we've continued it. We had a couple of snow days last week, so we are continuing our kindness challenge into this week as well. So it was just kind of fun thing to add in.
Yeah.
So I did kind of tell a little bit about myself, but I just kind of wanted to show a few pictures like our school counselor yesterday did, but my husband is Jim Bowman, and he is a school psychologist. He actually just retired last year, although he did work in the fall in Hammond. He filled in for someone who was on maternity leave, which kind of eased him out of retirement for a short time. And now he's fully retired. However, you never know when a new opportunity might present itself. But he worked in the Hammond schools 38 years, at least 39. And then my 4 children, they are actually down in the lower right-hand corner of the slide. And my daughter's actually the oldest. She was the one that was born 2 weeks before we moved up to Griffith. My oldest son is to the far left in the picture. His name is Christopher, and he is married to Kelly, and they live in Saugatuck, Michigan. They have 3 children, a 6th grader, a 2nd grader, and then a pre-kindergarten. My son Jeff is the next, and that was his wedding actually 2 summers ago during the pandemic. So we only had 40 people, and he is married, and they just had their first child in October. And he is currently a nurse anesthetist up at a hospital in Racine. The 3rd son is Casey. He's actually my 2nd in line with the boys, but he is married as well. And he's married to Kylie, and they live in near Steamboat Springs, Colorado. And they have a daughter, Bryn, who will be 3 in May. And then my daughter, who is the oldest, she is the closest one to our family as far as living only 15 minutes away. And she lives in Highland. She's married, and she has a daughter, Ava, who is in 3rd grade, and then a son, Brody, who is in kindergarten in the Highland school system. So the picture right above is kind of everyone. That was the day Becky got engaged to Jeffrey, which was August of, it was like three years ago. And then they ended up getting married the following year, but that was right during the middle of the pandemic, 2020. So it's been quite an interesting journey with all the kids. And then I have the picture of my husband and I near Lake Michigan. We love going up to the lake. we're going to enjoy it even more because we'll have a chance to visit our son, Chris and Kelly, as they're up in Saugatuck, so that'll be fun. And then I threw in the picture of Clark Middle School, and that was always one of my favorite pictures when we were celebrating our teachers for Teachers Week and Teacher Appreciation. So I did go to Taylor University for undergrad, like I mentioned earlier, and majored in art education, and then started a couple of years later as the school counseling program. And I actually also took a minor in art, so I was able to keep my art license and finished right before I had my daughter. And then I also professionalized my license through Purdue and took additional classes at Purdue Calumet at the time, which is now Purdue Northwest. And then 3 years ago, I actually took on the responsibility of SEL coordinator for secondary ed, and ended up working closely with Sarah Castaneda, who is the director of our secondary education at Lake Central. And we formed committees for advisory. We started our advisory back. We had advisory in the 90s in the Lake Central schools, came back to kind of regroup and rebrand the advisory with SEL programming. We had a great committee that we put together for the middle schools and the high school, and we started on our journey with SEL. Hold on, I need another drink.
Yeah,
When I talk, I always need to have some water. So, so I've been doing that in addition to still working with the kids. I still have a caseload. I have the end of the alphabet, SENT through Z, and then still do all my normal counseling duties here at the school, plus work with the coordination of the social emotional learning. Move on to the next slide.
So I'd say between your family and your position in the school, you are a little bit busy. Lots going on. So thank you for sharing that. I'll go on to your next slide. You wanted to say anything about this one?
This is just kind of a recap, but I've thought about my years as a school counselor, and it's really hard to put it into, 6 bullet points. I could have gone on forever, but it has allowed me, I've served so many different students and families over the years, and I can still remember many names and faces and situations that I've dealt with. Sometimes I'll just pull something crazy out of my memory bank that I all of a sudden remember that happened, and talk about it. Or I might see somebody out in the community and it triggers a memory, and we have a good conversation with that individual. But it's been just really, really good to be able to guide students as they prepare for their future, especially during the years, at the high school, helping students to, see them grow from a 9th grader and finally graduate as a 12th grader as they made their plans for their careers. And then the thing I love about the middle school is you really see them at a young age. And here we actually have 5th graders in our school. So it's a 5 through 8 building, and just seeing the transition and the changes that they go through from 5th grade to the time they leave here as 8th graders ready for high school. And we just finished yesterday having our meetings with our 8th graders and talking with them about their classes and choosing, career pathways. And then we will return to the classes next week and go in and meet with them again. And they have their Chromebooks, which makes it really nice, and help them see how to open up their scheduling and put in their classes and answer any questions they may have. And then, of course, as everyone knows, as a counselor, through the years, you're dealing with many different crises and difficult situations that come up. And those are the things that you never forget. And, even this year, we had a very difficult situation as the year kicked off at the high school. And I was able to go over and lend my support and help with the difficult situation that the students and staff were going through. And you impact, as a counselor, just hundreds and hundreds of lives. You don't even know how many people you really have impacted till someday you just meet up with them out in the community and they might start telling you their story and, ask, remember a time when you as a counselor helped them through a hard time or helped guide them in their path. And I think those are the intrinsic rewards that we get from our job. Each day is new and difficult sometimes, but there's those great things that happen in those moments when, you're like, wow, I did do something really good as far as helping someone change their life and move in the right direction. So the years, have been, crazy, raising 4 kids, working, doing sports. I mean, we were super involved in our church and the community. And you look back and you just think, how did I do all that? But every day you get up and keep going and, have a new day and enjoy yourself. And it's been nice because now I've been able to spend time with my grandkids and we're looking forward to more travel. We do love going to Colorado. That's one of our favorite places now. My cousin moved to Florida recently, so we've been able to go down there. And hopefully, when the pandemic ends, we'll be able to go a little bit farther and maybe even out of the country again. So those are the things that, being a counselor, you have a little more flexibility because you have the time off in the summer, a little bit of time off, and you can make those travel times just really worth it when you can connect with family and friends. So, all right.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm actually going to stop screen sharing here for just a second so that we can just chat. I'm going to take a look at the chat. If you do have any questions for Karen, I am going to ask her a few questions, but please feel free to put anything into the chat, either a question, a thought. If she says something that you want more information about, if you want her to explain something a little bit more, please feel free to put that into the chat. We did just have somebody comment. We have so much in common. I worked at Clark for 6 years, stayed at home for 3 years, got my counseling degree. You see that, Karen? Okay.
Yeah.
So that's great. So I'm going to go ahead and ask my first question. But again, please feel free to chime in, anybody. This is a kind of an open coffee talk. So feel free to either unmute or put it in the chat. Obviously, you were nominated by somebody for this counseling award last year. So that whomever nominated you, and I don't even know if you know who it was, maybe you do, but that person obviously thought that you were doing something unique or something really special with your counseling program. Can you talk about maybe as much as you know of what that was, maybe that you were nominated for? Can you talk a little bit about your school counseling program and maybe share a few things that you think make your program special, unique, effective with students? Just give us a little bit of information about that.
Okay, well, I do know who nominated me. I didn't know originally, and I was, after working for so long, I was like, wow, this is great. It took a while to get nominated, but over the years, you do a lot of many different things, and I've never been one to really think of myself, as just on a pedestal or anything like that. That's just not me. But probably with 3 years ago, coming back to the middle school and all the things that I had done actually at the high school as a counselor there, coming back to the middle school, just diving in and implementing, we took a deep dive with our bullying curriculum. We did presentations, all 3 middle schools. We all worked together with anxiety and depression because more and more we were seeing kids with those issues, doing, group meetings, the things that were happening within the schools, just a lot of, anxiety. This was pre-pandemic, but then 3 years ago, we attended the whole child conference. There were several of us from the Lake Central School Corp that went down to Bloomington. And that was kind of the springboard for looking at starting to implement more of the social emotional learning here in the school system. So once I actually took on that role, as the coordinator for the secondary ed, and then I had a counterpart, Marcy, at the elementary. We worked very closely that year, that was 3 years ago, to start promoting what we were going to be doing. We went around to all the different buildings. We went to all the elementary schools. We gave presentations on the type, why SEL was important. We talked about ACEs. We talked about the baggage and the trauma that kids are coming in with, and why we were seeing so many different things with kids more in the last 5 to 10 years than we'd ever seen before. And through that process, Sarah Castaneda, who I, just owe so much to, she and I worked together to put together committees of people that were just really awesome that came that summer and worked together on a curriculum for the middle school for the social emotional learning. And we paralleled a lot of our lessons to Lori Desautel's framework. We had all been trained. Our group had all been trained already under her. We had her come to our school system several times. And then she eventually came back and we trained everybody, except obviously since the pandemic happened, she hasn't been here, but we were able to get everybody from the high school to the middle schools to the elementary to attend at least one of her programs. And that really kind of was helping change the mindset for where we were moving as a school system. And then at the high school, I had a group of people that I worked with. And the first year was kind of slowly getting implemented. It was a little rough start, but this year, the third year, things have gone really well as far as really getting more buy-in from the faculty at the high school. And we utilized this program called Believe in You. It's through Herf Jones. It's been awesome. They have all kinds of curriculum that kind of parallels the videos, and then just all that going on besides doing what I normally do with counseling. The program we're using here at the middle school is called Second Step. We adopted that right at the end of, well, it was actually the spring of 2020 when the pandemic hit and all the counselors were scrambling. We were all making our own lessons for our Google Meets, and we ended up adopting Second Step, which is a SEL programming, and it's just been really, a great program. But we didn't want to burden the teachers with all this extra work and curriculum. So Sarah and I actually took it on ourselves to screencastify many of the videos, and we wrote kind of short lesson plans for the advisories, and then put together the advisory lessons for the year. And we then utilized all the curriculum that we had written for 5th grade, and we're using that each year because it's new. As the 4th graders come in, it's new curriculum for them, and it's mainly focused around brain development, brain science, neuroscience, and then there's a lot of fun activities interspersed into that curriculum. Also things like, working on kindness, developing empathy, caring about others. And so then they transition from 5th grade into the 6th, 7th, and 8th into the Second Step programming, which is really nice because it's a little bit different for each grade level, and they're constantly updating their programming as well. So those were the kind of things that were going on in the last couple of years. And I think that was part of the reason I guess I would have been nominated. So
I love the kind of the K12, continuum of the lessons. That's pretty neat. And I'd say in some cases unique because yes, not all districts have that. So kind of streamlined, and so that's really cool. So thank you for sharing that. And thank you for sharing even some of the specific resources and curricula that your district uses. That's helpful, I'm sure, to other counselors on here with us today.
Did anybody also, I was just going to say something too. Then just this year, actually at the elementary level, the school counselors there and the school service providers are also using Second Step, and they're kind of doing the same thing. They just started this year, and they're doing Screencastify's. So now we will have, the elementary, kids, getting that same type of programming. And they had some great programming that they had also written prior to Second Step that they were utilizing at the elementary. So they've been doing a great job. It's just, just finding that time, for them to do some great activities with the kids, and then getting, elementary teachers are, they're very, they're much more, I guess, conducive to, very hugging and being close to the kids, whereas the kids get older, we kind of have to, it changes a little bit, and, teachers, they are realizing the importance of just making those personal connections and those relational connections, and how that will amplify the learning of students so much. So it's been good to see things happening as well at the elementary.
Yeah, that's great. And I was going to ask you too, and you already mentioned this a couple of times, just your collaboration with other staff in your building and in your district, but anything else you want to share around that piece? Any collaborative relationships that are just have been really helpful to you as a counselor in your building?
Yeah, I think it's been really good here at Clark. We work with our administration very closely, and we try to have monthly meetings. Sometimes we get so bogged down, it's like we just have to squeeze on in really fast, but we always collaborate, kind of catch up with what's going on within the student body, things that are coming up, things that we need to be aware of. We also collaborate as a department. So our counselors attend all the department meetings. So we are aware of what's going on within the teachers, things that are happening, in the classrooms, any concerns or potential things we need to address. And then we collaborate with our teachers. I mean, we set up the meetings many times for parent-teacher talks. We do a lot of that, of course, virtually now, which has been kind of good. And we're involved in collaboration. We just had our RTI meetings and working with the teachers and our administrator and parents, meeting with kids that are, still struggling and getting help through their reading program and additional help in math and those kinds of things. But we also collaborate as the 3 middle schools. So we try to meet monthly, at least connect, and we do that. We've done that virtually now. Last year, I think we met in person. We tried to meet in person maybe 1 or 2 times, but sorry, there was an announcement. But we're having a meeting today with the middle school counselors, and we just kind of plan. We talk about what's been going on, concerns that we're having, maybe a situation, a case that might be difficult, and just getting input from others and talking about, now we're on the 8th grade scheduling and just planning for the next couple months as the school year comes, move into second semester. So I've been setting up those meetings and just set one up this morning. So we're going to be meeting a little later today.
How helpful it can be to all of the counselors and mental health professionals in the district to meet often and regularly, to be on the same page with services you're providing, to get ideas from one another. I'm sure, if you hear, oh, this counselor in this building's doing this, okay, how can we replicate that in our building? So it's so beneficial to have those meetings with your other counselors. That's great. I was going to ask you about advocacy. I have kind of 2 questions that go a little bit together, but first question is, in what ways do you advocate for the profession, school counseling profession? And then also, if that includes involvement with things outside of your, building and your position, in what ways can other counselors get involved? What are some things that they could do to advocate? Any suggestions you have around advocacy?
Yeah, well, I guess I kind of listened to what Mr. Munson had to say. So that was yesterday. And I feel like I've always advocated for our profession as far as the need for counselors, the need for more counselors. I mean, I was in many situations over the years where I was the lone wolf out there by myself, especially when I was at the school in Valparaiso at Union Township Schools. And I was like, you people need more help here. Like, one person can't do all this. And, you know, I pushed and pushed and would show records of all the things that I was doing, and we ended up getting a part-time person several years in. And by the time I had my third child, Casey, actually I took that part-time position. So I ended up working 3 days a week. It was like 1 year. So I did 3 days a week, but did like a full, really like probably 40 hours worth of work in 3 days, and had 3 kids. So the other gal took on the full-time position. My principal was like, why you want to go part-time? And I'm like, yeah, I have 3 kids. I got a lot going on, you know, and it worked out really well. And then by the time I had Jeff, which was toward the end of my 7 years at Wheeler, you know, I took a couple of years off because, you know, it's hard when you're by yourself. And thankfully I got the one other additional counselor. But then, you know, when I went to Kaler, it was the same thing. We had at the time a principal, an assistant, and the counselor. And, you know, we all 3 agreed that we needed more help. Well, then the school system added an additional assistant principal, but still kept only 1 counselor. So, you know, again, just record keeping and time, you know, showing all the time that was spent with, you know, phone calls and parents and crisis and situations and teacher. We had, you know, we met with teams at the time. And that was the year finally in the winter of '97 that we brought on some homeschool facilitators, as they were called. They were basically quasi-counselors. They were counselors helping us to do our jobs. And the high school hired 1, the middle school, each of the middle schools each hired 1. And I was so thankful because Erin Spinks, I see her on the video today. I was just so thrilled to get her, but always pushing to, you know, that why we're important, what we do, because so many times people don't know, they have no idea what we do. Like, you know, and I was a teacher once, but until you are a teacher and then you come into this position, you realize, wow, what really goes on in the office each and every day. Over the years, I was involved in many committees in the corporation. I served on, you know, 1 year we were doing a couple of years looking at year-round school. I was on that committee. I was one of the parents that did not want year-round school because my kids were all in sports at the time. And I was like, that would kind of ruin the sports season. But over the years, I was on the gifted committee, just being part of the workings and inner workings of the school corp. And then also going to conferences, you know, attending the ISCA, going downstate for the various offerings. And now it's really great because you can be part of many different webinars. It's great. I mean, technology has opened up so many doors as far as being able to connect with other people and get involved in webinars. And I did that a lot during the pandemic, where I met up with a number of different people when we were looking for the SEL curriculum, just talking to people that were out there about what they were using in their schools. So just always being kind of active and connected and talking about what you do and letting other people know what you do on a daily basis. Because there's nothing worse than hearing a teacher say, I don't know what those counselors do all day. And it's like, really, do you want to exchange places like for an hour? So like, just sitting here, my phone's already rang several times. Who knows what it's about? So, yeah.
Yeah, it's so important though, even just sitting on committees within the school where your voice can be incorporated, your advocacy, not only for kind of, you know, sharing of what you can provide, but also at that student voice, that student advocacy piece too is a huge component of what we as counselors do. And certainly sitting on different committees, we can include that student voice.
I did want to add one thing too. we were able to add additional counselors here in our corp, and thanks to some of the other counselors 3, 4, 5 years ago that we're working to put together data we kind of did needs assessments and took note of all the different situations we were dealing with and the types of dealing with abuse, dealing with suicidal ideation, anxiety, depression, difficulties in academics, not being able to spend the kind of time that you needed to spend, with all the kids, because we're here for all the kids. So we were very fortunate to be able to add some additional help and counselors. And besides the counselors, we do have what we call school service providers as well too. And they help with our special needs population, working with goal setting and small groups and those kinds of things. So that's been very, very good. That is one thing I applaud Lake Central for, is that they were listening to us and know what we were going through as counselors. So we were able to, at least add several more people, and the high school has 10 now. So that's helped them out quite a bit.
Yeah. That record keeping and data collection, you always hear that's the key piece for us to be able to share really the impact and talk about advocacy. That's the best way to advocate, is to keep track of that data and then to share it, more importantly, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to open it up to everybody. Any questions for Karen or Karen? If there's something that I didn't ask that you want to share, now's the time to do that. So if anybody has any questions, please unmute or drop it in the chat. Karen, if you can think of anything that you want to tell the other people on the call about, feel free to do that as well.
Well, I just say keep getting up every day, come in, each day's a new day, a new experience. I mean, you could have 5 things planned to do, and then something crazy happens and that takes up, an hour or 2 hours in your morning. There might be a Friday that you're, it's like, I'm going to get going early. And all of a sudden at 3:30, something happens. And, it's like you have to scramble and pull things together, make phone calls. But it's a very exciting job, I guess you would say, very, very challenging. I find for myself, I have to, I stay active. Haven't been real active this winter, but I must say I enjoy getting out, walking, bike riding. Used to go to the gym pre-pandemic, but my husband still goes. He tries to get me to go, but I'm just like, not right now. So it's just important to have an outlet, and my faith has helped me in so many ways over the years. Just if I didn't have that, I don't know where I'd be today, because it's not easy. Life's full of ups and downs. We all have things in our family. We see pictures of our families, and pictures only present a very small slice of what's going on in everyone's life. And I always love my husband saying, life's not a picture. There's so many other things that go into everything that's happening. And I guess for me, being happy is just being content with who I am and where I'm going and what I've done over the years. And, have I made mistakes? Sure, we all do. And you learn from those mistakes. And whatever mistake it was as a parent or a counselor or a teacher, you're like, what can I do better next time? And that's the question you ask, because there's nothing wrong with admitting you messed something up. I remember when I was a young counselor, I was like, oh my God, I think I did the wrong thing. And now it's like, we still ask ourselves, did I do the right thing? Did I make the right, did I help that student enough? And you just have to be confident that, you're there for them. And, some days you think, did I really help that kid? And then they come back and they're like, that talk we had really helped me. So just remember that. And as you see kids out in the community, my husband and I run into people all the time when we're out, and they're like, oh yeah, you were my counselor. Yeah, I went to Purdue, I did this. And it's just great to hear those stories. And I think those are the rewards that you reap, as you move through the years. So I challenge you all to just
Absolutely.
keep living the dream and working hard and enjoying yourselves. So
Thank you, Karen. And oh gosh, I love, yeah, the students coming back is probably the best reward, right? And the self-care, so important, especially right now. So thank you, Karen, for all you do for students, for your school, for your district, for the state. Um, you are appreciated. Happy School Counseling Week. I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat, but what I am going to do is share a couple of things before we close here. First of all, I did put a session evaluation just now in the chat. So if you want to complete that, you will receive a PGP point for attending today's session through the completion of the session evaluation. So if you want to go ahead and click on that link and fill that out, that would be great. The last few things I will share here. There is a photo challenge that the American School Counselor Association, ASCA, is putting on this week. And I've put that up on the screen here. Today's challenge for the photo session is to respond to the question, school counselors and administrators are better together because, and then fill in the blank. If you want to participate, you can go to the ASCA website, print the page, fill in your response here, and then take a picture with it and post it on your social media. We do ask you, if you do it, to tag ASCA, National School Counselor Week, Keep Indiana Learning, and ISCA, which are all included here on the slide. And here is Karen. I asked Karen to respond to this, and she did put in her response here into the slide. Just so you know, I will share the slides after we get off the Zoom here. So you will have access to all of the links I just put in the last slide. And then of course, this information as well, if you want to participate in the photo challenge. So don't feel like you need to write it down really fast. I'll send those slides out to you. Finally, we do have tomorrow, we're having coffee talk with the Trailblazer Counselor Award recipient. And then on Thursday, we have Julie Hill and Connie Syvertson. They were the High School Counselor Award recipients and the Counselor of the Year Award recipients. So be sure to join us the next couple of mornings as we chat with some other amazing counselors. Finally, we have some resources. Again, these are all on the slide that you will have after today's session. Do want to make note of ISCA's award nominations for that are due May of this year. So if you are interested in putting in a nomination for an amazing school counselor that you know, the nomination form is posted and available now. With that, thank you again for attending today. Finally, I do want to share some upcoming events. We have a lot of things planned here over the next couple of months. So be sure to check out any of those events for counselors that are, for the most part, free. So hopefully you can tune in. Thanks again for joining us. Thank you very much, Karen, for your time.
Thank you.
And have a wonderful day, everybody.
Love you, Karen.
Thank you.
Take care. Thank you.